going to start with the super basics. So the goal is as if you guys know zero about breath, just to make sure that we're covering the foundations and actually give you something, you know what you're working with, you know why. Biggest things. And if you have any questions or it feels like this is too monotonous, let me know. I'm A-okay with that kind of feedback.
Hey Joe, you're boring.
Exactly.
Like
I can certainly just skip right ahead. If it's like, this is bad, let me know. I'm okay with that. But we'll start with a few questions. See what you guys do know already. Which is number one. Do you guys know what controls breathing? Like how you actually breathe?
Do you hold your breath for a while?
Diaphragm?
Close? Yeah. Diaphragm. Absolutely, right? So, perfect. That is like the main driver for breathing. A lot of people tend to think that we like forcefully pull in air, like that's the goal of breathing, is to get the air from outside to inside. But what you're doing is engaging your diaphragm. It's an actual muscle. You control it, and when you activate the muscle, it starts in this dome shape, and it starts to flatten out, which just creates a negative pressure cavity in your lungs. So you elongate the lungs, and it makes them larger and creates kind of this pressure vacuum. And that brings in air from the outside down into your lungs, which immediately starts to give you an understanding of why it's important to have deeper breaths, because if you can breathe deeply, then you're going to pull in more air, right? And the big thing in air that we're after is what? Oxygen, right? So the more that you can get in, the more you can saturate your tissues, the more you can dive into repairing things and keeping things, right? Homeostasis then becomes much easier when you get more oxygen. Very cool. So let's say that's the perfect answer for all of us right now, is the diaphragm. Do you all kind of think that there's like an optimal way to breathe and a suboptimal way to breathe? Would you wager?
Yeah.
Is that a fair thing?
Yeah.
Okay, I will say absolutely not. There is only one way to breathe. You're wrong, and that is wrong. No. But that is for the moment is the correct way to breathe, right? So what you'll learn about me and the way I view the body is everything it does is absolutely perfect. So even if you get you suffer some kind of injury, what you have to do is like look at that moment and understand why the body has decided to do what it's doing in the moment. For some people, like a really kind of vivid example is Christopher Reeves, right, the old Superman, and the injury that he had, which was a fracture of one of the top cervical vertebrae, right? And his body also had the choice to just say, let's call it quits, right? That was way too catastrophic, and maybe this is just the end. Decided that what his body will do is channel the energy into one spot that lets him get past that moment and continue surviving, even though all around that's not a glorious thing to experience. His body's able to take it, manage it, and proceed forward. So that's kind of one of my overall views about health and the body, is that it doesn't really make mistakes. It's a very intelligent thing that will always get you through to the next moment. And how I view my role in someone else's health progression is kind of keeping it on track, so to speak, because we experience a lot. Our society isn't exactly as natural as we're meant to be, and so stress is a very easy thing to come by, and managing it is a tough thing. So my hand is just kind of keeping things centered as your body already knows, or already does what it knows how to do. Does that make sense? Okay, so reeling it back. The breath. The true answer of like the diaphragm doing the majority of the work is the perfect answer for us right now. And I say that because we're all at rest. We're not putting much of a demand on our body besides just sitting here and listening to some random guy. That's our only mission, right? We're sitting and our body has a very low level of demand on it. So then that begs the question, okay, what about different scenarios? And one of the most basic things about the breath is understanding that there are different levels of it. And an easy thing to do is like, let's think about someone who is having an anxiety attack, for example, right? So the breath starts to look a lot more like, right? Or even if you've done like Wim Hof breathing, it kind of looks like that too. And that's what we'll get into that. It's a very specific purpose. But the breath changes its, like the reason behind the breath changes entirely. So it goes from an at rest to this higher up response of engaging the musculature, and you can create more of that pressure cavity much faster. So you start to draw in air rapidly, and it becomes a faster paced breath because you just want more oxygen, more oxygen, more oxygen, right? And then you get this anxiety type feeling because you stop putting out so much, you put out so much CO2, you don't take in a lot of oxygen. So you start creating this imbalance and your brain can't quite register it, and that's that whole anxious feeling. Question?
Yeah. You know, like flight or fight?
Yes.
So if you're in, I mean, either or, like, wouldn't that be like rapid breath in the chest? And wouldn't it be quite opposite? Like, wouldn't you want to optimize your oxygen intake if you were fighting or flighting?
In fight or flight?
Yeah. But like, you know, your heart rate starts beating faster and then you have shallow breath. So why is it that like that's our response when we need like optimal oxygen to perform?
Yes. So fight or flight is the same activation in your nervous system. Like it's essentially you perceive stress or you perceive threat, which doesn't need to be running from an animal trying to kill us anymore. It can be this jackass in traffic cut us off, right? And that could just like tear our nervous system apart if it's not ready to manage something like that. So why is that beneficial? Because again, in the moment, you are like wired evolutionarily, your neurobiology is wired such that all you have to do is survive every moment. And that's why it becomes so valuable eventually. We'll talk about it to get this feeling of safety, because that's where growth and repair comes in. But in a given moment, we're out in traffic or we are running from some wildlife. The goal is to ramp up your ability to mobilize, essentially, right? And if you can bring in a lot of oxygen much faster, then you can do that. And you're not so, even 1 minute from now, your body isn't caring about the CO2 to oxygen ratio because, well, what if you're dead in 30 seconds, right? So it's literally second to second to second of can you make your way through. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool. Okay, great. So starting to understand that the different things that we experience are going to create a different need within ourselves for how we're going to breathe, right? So step one, at rest, really driving through the diaphragm. Then there's two other steps. I'm going to bring out this lovely guy, kind of for visual sake. But back to the basics real quick. Diaphragm sits like this. It connects around the entire undersurface of the rib cage, tying into even the lower back vertebrae. It's crazy. It also ties into a lot of different fibers that also go and like run down the legs and up through the mid-back. Wild, 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 but that's why I'm doing class on it, because it can be such a pivotal point for a lot of different things. So normal breathing, diaphragm, we're at rest. We want this to be able to flatten out, draw in air through trachea, get into the lungs, right? Second level of breath is going to be really utilizing the rib cage. So let's say, like a minor occurrence, like you get an email that you don't want to get, right? It's like I have to respond to that. Something silly throughout the day, but that can put your body in a state of like minor, I won't call it threat yet, but minor activation of just like a not totally rest, right? And so even something as simple as that can start to change the way that your brain is perceiving the environment.
Would that give you like a little hit of adrenaline?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll come right back to that if I don't. Remind me. Level 2 though is really using the rib cage. So you can feel this on yourself. You can make yourself breathe up in your chest. And if you take in a big inhale trying to inflate your chest, you'll notice that your rib cage starts to flare out. It flares kind of like, there's different levels, but essentially it opens up and then will collapse back down. So same thing trying to happen with using your diaphragm is you have muscles in between here that can essentially create more of this cave-like structure, and that's going to bring in more oxygen. So going from sitting, even to standing, even just walking upstairs, that's enough of a stress for your body to start to use the rib cage. And it's going to start to use both of these things concurrently, right? It doesn't just totally dissociate from the diaphragm, it starts to use both of them. So it's kind of a hierarchy of how you breathe, and the more stressed out you get, the more you use. Yeah.
Why is that the default though?
Why is what the default?
Like breathing, chest breathing, when you're doing like harder activities, wouldn't it be quite the opposite?
Just because it's a higher demand. Again, like the interesting thing is your body has a tough time perceiving, like when you go and do a workout, that's technically stress. And if you can manage that stress, great, you're going to grow from it. In the moment, it's always like kind of a hyper-analysis of what's going on to make sure that nothing bad happens, or to at least mitigate that chance. So even if you're working out or going upstairs, it's going to do as much as it can, but it's also going to make it as easy as possible for the moment, not caring if long-term, if it gets stuck with this patterning, that could lead to unfortunate things. It's literally moment to moment to moment, which is why like taking the moments of pause and awareness to then kind of go back in and work on what you want to be a habit becomes really important, because you can change the way that it is, right?
Question.
Yeah.
Follow-up question.
Yeah. Good.
But like, if you were to like actively work on breathing with your diaphragm while doing rigorous exercise, right? Like marathon runners do that, and like bike riders will do that, where it's like significantly harder to breathe that way.
Mm-hmm.
But isn't that also just like, I don't know, offer some level of benefit to it
Work making sure that you can breathe through your diaphragm.
while doing strenuous activity?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's just that what you do over time, like elite athletes have essentially prepared their nervous system for such intense demands that for them, going and running a marathon is equivalent to the average person walking upstairs,
Okay.
right? So it can learn and it can progress. And yes, it's beneficial because then you can manage more, right?
Right, I see, okay.
Yeah, does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Were you going to ask something about that, Celia?
Well, it occurred to me that the phrase breathing through your diaphragm is sort of a misnomer, because you're always using your diaphragm to some extent.
Yeah, totally.
What you're saying is sometimes you're doing more chest breathing and less activation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
I figured out a long time ago, swimming, that all I had to do was focus on the exhale
Yeah.
because of the negative air pressure.
Mm-hmm.
So riding my bike up a hill, anything, just focus on the exhale.
Yeah.
And I can't run a marathon, but that must have been the right thing.
Yeah.
It's just not yet.
Yeah, exactly.
I know.
Not yet, exactly.
Yeah.
Totally. And does it make sense yet why that is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Negative air, you don't have to work on the inhale.
Right.
The work is only on the exhale.
Yeah. And if you can, like if you're looking for that edge of endurance and you can focus on that exhale being elongated, then
Yeah.
what you're doing is allowing for more efficient use
Yeah.
of the oxygen over time.
Yeah.
Right? And so if someone who has never swam before went and tried that immediately, they'd probably start to freak out a little bit because it'd be very hard to do.
Uh-huh.
But building it up, yeah, 100%. Right? Okay, so level 1, mostly diaphragm. Level 2, we start to utilize the muscles between the rib cage, inside the rib cage, yada, yada, yada. Level 3 then gets to kind of the shoulders and neck, which is truly like if you're having an anxiety attack, the really heavy breathing of engaging everything. Even if you see someone like me, you might see this currently if I like am stressed out just by public speaking. My nervous system perceives that as a little bit of a threat, right? Because like, ooh. And if you see me take big breaths throughout this, I probably do a lot of muscular engagement through my neck. And again, what I said in the beginning is that a suboptimal way to breathe? No, because again, relative to the moment, what am I doing? This is a fairly stressful thing for me to go through. So to be able to engage and get that and keep everything working through this moment is beautiful, right? And then do I have the ability to take a pause, reset, let things shift, and equalize back out to more of a physiological rest? Yes, sweet. Then something like this can become beneficial for my body, for my nervous system, working on kind of stressing it out with a good level of stress and then reeling it back in, right? Cool. So level 3 again is neck musculature, top of the rib cage, like first rib. Celia could attest to this, for example, but if you've worked with me, so I look a lot at the top of the rib cage through the base of the neck, seeing how things are going. You could attest as well. that's a big area I check because it can be how your body starts to use itself over time if we experience a lot of stress and then we don't quite regulate afterwards, right? And then when we do work on that area, for example, it's much easier to take in a soft breath that fills the lungs, right? So a quick little self-assessment you can do, if you bring your thumbs, they're back with your fingers, you're going to find your spine, these bumps right here. Everyone can feel that, right? If you bring your head forward a little bit more, they stick out a bit more, just the bumps on the back of your neck. So put your fingers there, and if your thumbs are pointed down, you wrap those around the front of the neck, you'll find the clavicle, right, the collarbone. Everyone has their thumbs there? So from there, if you just push into the neck, so off the clavicle, into the neck, and you can do a fairly hard press, up to your tolerance, but you're going for right inside here, so clavicle right off onto this next really dense feeling structure, and then you take in a big breath through your chest. You might notice that one side is a lot more tender or holding a lot more tension. And it's totally possible, like right now we've talked about all these different breathings while Skelly is standing here totally normal, right? We don't always face stress just like this. There's a lot of different things your body does. Of course it can start to activate one side more than the other. Even if you just use one arm like a computer or desk, all that stuff, you can definitely get this imbalance going. So did you guys feel that different level of tension or tenderness one side to the other? And that is kind of a key, a signaling of, okay, often then maybe we do get that level of breathing from a high stress thing and then forget to reel it back. Okay, so we'll definitely go through things to reel it back and make it much easier for your body to repair or heal or grow from those kinds of stresses. Does that all make sense so far?
Yep.
Yeah, beautiful. So that is the structure of the breath. Looking at that, you can all focus your attention over here to this poster. The vagus nerve, what this does is it's an outlining of one of the nerves that leaves your brainstem and everything that goes and touches. So if you are familiar at all with breath work, I'm sure you've heard of the vagus nerve or vagal tone or something. It's becoming extremely popular because of what we're learning it can do in terms of healing and repairing and all that stuff. But essentially it's a huge nerve. It goes everywhere, it touches everything inside your chest cavity and abdominal cavity, except for the last little bit of your colon. And so, yeah, totally.
There's a significance there I think we're going to find out about later.
You got it. But yeah, and so that is a largely all parasympathetic nerve. And so again, we'll dive into that real quick. But it gives you that sense of rest and digest, which I'm sure most people have heard. We have the fight, we're getting into the neurology of it now. We have the fight or flight level of the nervous system. We have the rest and digest, and there's truly a third, which is healing and repair and social connection, right?
Oh, really?
So what we're learning is there's two sides to the vagus nerve. So you have a dorsal vagal nerve and a ventral vagal nerve, which is evolutionarily a newer thing. Dorsal vagal has been around for a long, long time, and it is just the ability to kind of put the brake on the nervous system relative to the gas being the sympathetic, right? So we long thought that it was just gas, brake, being able to do that. The way I like to think about what the nervous system does is more so like stove burners, right? And when you turn on a stove burner, you have low, medium, and high. And truly the nervous system is like 3 different burners, and they're always just going low to high, low to high, low to high, low to high, to whatever degree they need to, based on what your nervous system is experiencing.
What does the ventral vagal?
So ventral vagal is more so of this social connection thing,
Okay.
which is why, for example, humans are such a communally based species, right? And for example, why something like solitary confinement is such a harsh punishment,
Yeah.
because it will immediately have that impact on your nervous system of going really, really low, maybe even off for that one burner,
Huh.
right? So you have those three different categories that, relative to whatever stimulus your nervous system is experiencing, it should be able to modulate itself, right? And you keep hearing me say like nervous system stimulus or the experience that it's having. Those experiences can be both externally in the environment, like I was saying, me talking to a group of people can be an external cue, or it can be an internal cue. This season, like have some cheesecake, right? And the level of sugar, if you blasted through the whole cheesecake, the level of sugar that your body then has to deal with, we all know sugar is not the greatest thing for us, oxidative stress, yada, yada, yada. Your body has to deal with that internal cue. And so it will change its levels of activation for the nervous system to be able to get through that stimulus and then be able to survive afterwards.
Would you just repeat that last sentence? It'll change when you eat the sugar,
Yeah.
it'll change
It's all self-modulation. So it has low to high, it's going to be able to change its level of activation.
So if I eat half a cheesecake,
Yeah.
my body's going to have to dial
Yeah.
things.
Literally any stimulus. Even me whipping my arm up into the sky. If I
Okay.
stood up, started to go up the stairs, if I wanted to go to sleep, if I wanted to, whatever. Yeah.
Okay.
Any moment it's going to be fine-tuning this. And so, like another little sidetrack, but something you can all look at later on is called heart rate variability. Is anyone familiar with that? I wonder why. Heart rate variability is just that. It's the ability of your heart rate to vary according to its experience, internal or external. So again, that's controlled largely by your autonomic nervous system. Can it fine-tune its dials? And it's becoming really well known as this like golden standard for overall health is heart rate variability. The higher the level of variability you have, the better your overall health, because your nervous system has the ability to self-modulate very well, right? To fine-tune the dials according to what it's experiencing. All makes sense?
Is that in line with recovery?
Oh, yeah.
That's that, right?
100%.
The recovery rate of your heart.
Yeah. Well, and recovery is what? Any clue?
Okay.
It's the ability of your nervous system to regulate, maybe turn down sympathetic, turn up ventral vagal, maybe turn up a little bit of dorsal vagal,
Oh, okay.
right? Question over here?
Are you saying we have cheesecake?
Yeah.
Reward.
Yeah. At any time you want. If you're like, Joe, this sucks, that's the cue. Just go get some food.
Yeah, that's gotta be my reward at the end.
That's huge. Good. I love that. Okay, so that's kind of the anatomy, structurally, and neurology of the breath so far. Make sense? Yeah? Beautiful. The other thing then I would say is like the biomechanics of the breath, right? And so what happens here, we kind of dabbled into it a little bit, but how your brain is then talking to your body in terms of what it needs to do according to the moment, right? So I just stood up. It needs to cue my heart rate to maybe pump a little bit faster, activate a little bit of the rib cage, still using the diaphragm, just to get everything ready inside the body to literally stand up. And then it will consider whatever's afterwards later. Cool. So,
I have a question.
yeah.
So that upper chest breathing,
Mhm.
chest breathing, when I think about having to tidy my house, I'd start doing that.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Why is that just a thing I need to go to a therapist about?
Wow.
Can I call my
Deep question.
How messy
I
is your
mean,
house?
yeah. Yeah. There's some other questions first.
Yeah.
Well, the first thing you asked was why? Like, why does that happen?
Well,
Or-
it's happening because I'm stressed. For
Yeah.
some reason, the thought, having to figure out where to put all, there's a lot of emotional attachment to all these little things.
Mhm.
a lot of people have died in my life, and I have all their little things. Some of them
Yeah.
are broken things.
Yeah.
So having to make those decisions, I guess, is emotionally heavy. So I just avoid it. Or sometimes I get started on it and not finish, and it's like worse.
Yeah.
And I have to face it sooner or later.
Totally. Yeah, I mean that's kind of the answer right there, right? Is it's an experience that you've had
Okay.
that has, in some capacity, I'm not a therapist, been unprocessed fully,
Okay.
right? And so this becomes a thing about like increasing your level of awareness or presence means you can then manage the moment fully as it comes, and you don't have to start to stack things, right? Because if you just kind of go through life and you do these horse blinders,
Yep.
everything peripherally kind of gets stacked on in terms of how your nervous system is going to start dealing with it.
Yeah.
And the more you can be present and aware in the moment, then process, integrate, yada yada yada. Just
So
becomes.
I'm gonna have to go through therapy in order to have a clean house.
Well, yeah. I don't know. I don't know.
Sounds like you're ready though.
Yeah, sounds like you're ready.
Yeah.
I have a great referral card for you.
Okay.
Yeah, so to get more of an understanding of the biomechanics, we're going to get a little more active. Everyone go onto your hands and knees, kind of tabletop position. And I'm sorry, I'm going to say one thing before we do anything here. You can look over back at Skelly. The other end of the diaphragm being this kind of umbrella-shaped thing in your body is the pelvic bowl, which is this other way umbrella-shaped thing in your body. What I want you to think about as we go through this exercise is this idea of playing catch between the two areas.
Oh.
So your diaphragm gets activated, you contract it, it flattens out. What I want you to feel is literally like focus on the energy of the breath and see if you can aim that energy down towards the pelvic bowl, towards the girdle, and catch it in the bottom. When you exhale, let that energy go back up. As the breath flows out, see if you can then catch it at the top of the diaphragm.
So what you're saying, your diaphragm and the muscles of your pelvic floor are working in coordination.
Absolutely.
Can I share something, Jeff?
Yeah. Hey.
That it's like, when you do that, it's really important to engage the muscles of the pelvic floor
Yeah.
because you're pressurizing that lower torso so much that if like you really pressurize it and you're not, and you have like a loose pelvic floor, it can like cause like prolapse kind of stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
So you do want like, and you know, you don't want to like over engage,
Mm-hmm.
right? But it's like a gentle, just like keep it taut.
Yeah. Yeah. And some more like visual cues there would be you can think about like when weightlifters or people lifting heavy things, the often cue is like an embrace, right?
Oh.
Create that sturdy structure there so you can then undergo a lot of pressure and come back out of it.
So it's not just like a lateral core, it's a...
Yeah. It becomes
Vertical
much more,
core,
it becomes much
okay.
more spherical
Okay,
in nature,
okay.
right? Of course, there's a difference between the tissues on the front and the tissues on the back, and then the tissues on the side compared to front or back.
Uh-huh.
So what you'll notice is that it's not always going to be this perfect like sphere and back in. It's going to be kind of oblong in nature according to where you're at currently and if there's any other stress in the moment, how you're going to breathe, and even if we can get it fully down into the diaphragm. Make sense? And then yeah, the other end, of course, what Dan is saying is if you strain yourself, like you can really put energy down there, and you think about like if you have a lot of anger or something, and you really just like tense everything down there, and you feel a lot of energy low down. Of course, you can like something like that could occur where like that's what a hernia is. Essentially, you have too much pressure, and then it goes through a hole, or there's a hole that breaks, and things start to leak out. So just be mindful. It's not going to happen here, but be mindful of just a gentle catch between the two. And so you can start kind of on your knees, just straight up like this. Let's see if we can get that breath going. So focus on kind of this middle of your abdomen area, solar plexus, E, kind of. And with the inhale, see if you can send some energy down into your pelvic bowl. And the exhale, see if you can get it to come back up. Anyone not have a grip on that?
What should it feel like?
literally imagine like a, well, does anyone else have something tangible for that? I literally imagine a ball of energy.
Or like a balloon filling
A
up.
balloon.
I feel like
Exactly,
like
like
this.
kind of comes 360.
Yeah,
So it's like filling up and then like the balloon's emptying a little bit.
yeah.
So you're like
If
floating
you-
towards those like a balloon.
Totally. If you
Okay.
can't grasp the
Balloon.
catching, if you can't grasp the catching, then exactly think about there's a balloon in the middle of it, and it's going into that spherical shape. Okay. So, yep.
Is there sort of like a maximum amount of time you should be breathing in to fill it up, or is it different for every person?
Different for everybody. We'll get into more of that soon. But yeah, kind of just whatever you can and whatever is comfortable for just exploring this area. Okay, and so then what I want you to do is let your stomach really stick out. You're going to do this kind of forward pelvic tilt and then bring your ribs over your hips. So your diaphragm is now essentially pointing out and forward, and your pelvic bowl, the other catcher's mitt, is now pointing up and forward. And they're kind of meeting here, if that makes sense. Right, and then try to do the same thing. Try and play catch with that. And it should feel a bit harder. Right? It should feel like it's not such a logical thing to get through. You guys experiencing that? Okay. Let's do the opposite. Let's tilt the pelvic bowl back and the rib cage back, so you'll kind of have this V shape to you. And now imagine that the catching is occurring kind of behind you. You're playing catch between those two areas. And fairly similar feeling. Still compare it to just this middle of the line there. The ease with which you can get breath in should be easiest when things are neutral.
It feels really clean when things are neutral.
Yeah.
It's not confused.
It's a great way to say it. Yeah. So this is just an understanding of this kind of turns into the self-assessment throughout the day. As you're going, can you play catch? Can you play catch in whatever position you're in? So the easiest becomes on your back, because you can let everything relax and you can focus just on catch down, catch up, catch down, catch up, right? And that's all you have to focus on. And then I would say, as we are right now, there's level 2. Most people can go right to this level of just playing catch there. And then there becomes like the variation. Once this feels super easy, you can do like 10 plus breaths and it's not a challenge anymore. You can start to throw some fun stuff in there. You can then do tabletop. So we're going to try this position out, see if we can get like 2 to 3 comfortable breaths in every position that we try. But same thing here is just playing catch and try and send the energy down into the pelvic bowl and then up into the diaphragm and on repeat. Okay. The reason that these different levels are starting to change the body is because of how gravity is starting to act on it. So this is all going to be part of the self-assessment. This is perpendicular to gravity, whereas we were just parallel to gravity, right? And there's different levels of all of this that we can do. So now, kind of go up onto your fingertips, let your hips sit a little bit low, and you'll be at this about 45-degree angle. And this is going to be somewhere, in terms of the ease, it's going to be between tabletop and straight up. So at this level, it should be somewhere in between those two in terms of how easy it is. Just another thing to practice in terms of keeping that breath within the 2 mitts, the 2 catching zones.
Question.
Yeah.
So would you practice like these types of positions of breath to sort of integrate that into your normal breathing? Like when would you
Yes,
do this? If
totally.
you're like having a panic attack or you need to calm down?
This is very general self-assessment. And it's cool because this also doubles as practice. So what I would say is like in a fairly normal state of mind for you, you could do this once a day, absolutely. And I would just, every position, and you can get creative with it too, try and get 5 to 10 breaths in every position. And that'll then take you whatever, 10, 15, 20 minutes. But a great way to get in tune with your breath and keep it adaptable to whatever kind of tilt you throw in your own body, right? So then there are, of course, other things you can do too. You can go like tabletop crab style and try and do the same thing. You can all try this one if you want. This will be harder just because it's a different level of demand on the body.
And how do you know that you're doing the catcher's mitt? I'm not quite sure if I'm grasping that concept yet. It's like I feel like I'm engaging that pelvic floor.
Yeah.
So does that mean that I'm doing that kind of that.
Yeah, I mean, what you want is, how you know it's happening efficiently is if you can maintain a equal level of breathing and the level of energy that you're catching each time feels the same. So if you can manage just like a very calm, normal breath for you, and you feel like you catch the energy and it's staying easy, you don't have to work to maintain it, then it's beautiful. If you start to feel like you're doing one of these and it feels like straining in a different way and it's not equal or balanced all around, then it's like, this is a weird position, let me really focus in on this one and try and get that breath down.
What do you mean by catch? Like, where am I catching it? Because I sort of had the same question.
Okay, yeah, so back to the beginning of just the diaphragm. The catching is just the diaphragm coming down. So if that doesn't apply to how, like, it's totally fine if that doesn't make sense for your body. Another way of understanding it would be just sticking with the balloon idea. And so then you can kind of go into this hand on the stomach, hand on the low back, and see if you can breathe equally, create equal pressure into the hand on your stomach and into the hand on your back. And just do it until you can. Once that becomes easy, then you want to try and create equal pressure side to side. Once you can start to get those coordinal directions down, the pressure there is easy, you start playing with the oblong shapes. Can you create equal pressure corner to corner? Can you create equal pressure front to side, back to side, things like that?
What if you can't do that? Like,
Then it just means practice, practice, practice. Because that's a very, yeah.
It's something that's helped me when I started doing that sort of stuff. If you take, like, say, a scarf, or even a sweatshirt, and you kind of loosely tie it around your, like, low stomach, it'll create, like, a physical presence around the entire body. And then you can, like, you don't actually tie it, and then you can feel all of it expanding. Because now you have, like, something that's actually touching you, so it's, like, all around, right? Like you were saying with your hands, having a physical thing engaging there gets the neurons to recognize that there's something there.
Yeah.
And again, it's like you said, it's just, you just gotta keep doing it.
Absolutely. But yeah, that idea is perfect because a band or a sweatshirt is going to give you 360 degrees of awareness, and even if you get a brace of some sort, then you can start to get more into the spherical nature of it. But however you can promote awareness, for some it's easy enough to just think about it. Definitely when I started, I needed like hands-on feeling, tactile awareness, resistance bands, stuff like that. And if there's areas where it feels like you just can't activate it at all, then like really ramping up the awareness, and you could like lay on some sort of ball that's just going to put a lot of pressure in a certain area, and then try to breathe into it until it feels like you can activate it, and then you bring it back into the more at neutral. Great question though. Make sense? That was huge, thank you. Beautiful.
If you feel lightheaded, what does that indicate?
So if you feel lightheaded, that is just indicating the O2, CO2 ratio is off. If anyone's interested, I do, or whatever, you could buy a pulse oximeter. It just measures the saturation, O2 level saturation, and it's just on the fingertip, and you can do some of the breathing techniques that we'll dive into in a moment and see how it's changing that. But yes, this lightheadedness, dizzy kind of feeling is a level of carbon dioxide that we're not yet used to. And you can certainly increase your ability to manage CO2. For example, something I love doing is like cold immersions or cold plunging, and it makes you want to breathe fast, and then you start to really throw off that balance. But you can kind of coach yourself over time to be able to at first manage that balance, and then to bring it back to more of a baseline level. Yeah, super cool.
There's not a right or wrong way to do all of this. I mean, we can just be at home and just start experimenting,
Totally.
and we're not going to
Yeah.
hurt ourselves or
No.
saturate ourselves with
No.
CO2.
Yeah, and the only thing to understand is, if anything ever does feel off, if you do start to get lightheaded or dizzy, all you have to do is forget that you're practicing breath work and just go back to a normal breath, right? Even if your normal breath isn't ideal, right? Like I said, one of the first things at the beginning is your breath is perfect for the moment,
Yeah,
regardless.
that's critical.
Okay, as is everything your body does. Sometimes it just can't manage everything, right? So there's that. Okay, then with that, question for you guys: what's better, chest breathing or belly breathing?
In the moment?
Yeah. Right?
Belly breathing.
Wow, but it depends, right? At rest, totally. And then again, you'll hear belly breathing a lot. Even that in nature, belly breathing just means that you are really coming through the abdomen, and the only thing I would caution there is think about the pressure dynamics that are then at play. You don't only want to be increasing the level of pressure on the front, you want to manage it and have it be balanced all the way throughout the tissues, right? So belly breathing is okay if it's a normal response to what's at hand. Same thing with chest breathing, same thing with a really anxious breath, right?
Well, and the other thing is, we've got lobes, so it's good to get to use all of your lungs sometimes, right?
Great segue.
Oh.
Yeah, great segue. Which is then what's another question to pose is what's better, nasal breathing or mouth breathing? This one's a little nuanced.
Depends on what you're doing.
Yes.
Depends on if you're inhaling or exhaling.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is better, inhaling or exhaling?
Totally, right?
Yeah,
Totally.
So
And
inhale, bounce, exhale. That's what I've been taught.
generally, yes. And again, that's perfect for if that's a good response for what's at hand. I would bet you not too much money, because I don't know how good you all are at this, but I would bet you if you went and sprinted 100 yards that you wouldn't be able to take in 10 breaths in a row through the nose, right? That there would be some level of really just wanting to increase the level of oxygen to start that rebalancing effect, right? So it just depends. It depends on the moment. But overall, yes, ideal at rest, yada, yada, yada. Try to get some nasal breathing, right? And if you can, even the exhale there, and you'll notice the difference. But a general thing to aim for is at least the inhales through the nose. Exhales, do whatever. Great. So we talked about all of that. Any questions? No? Does that self-assessment, that take-home assessment, seem tangible, something you could work on?
Yeah.
Yeah? And understanding the anatomy of it, that's something I forgot. The neurology component, this more diaphragmatic breath. Why would, with the limited neurological stuff I touched on, does anyone understand why your body would want to have the diaphragm be the active thing at rest?
What do you mean?
Well, let's just hop to it. So the vagus nerve picture, right? Let's say you take in a really deep breath through the stomach. You get that equal pressure throughout the whole. It's a great breath, right? 360 spherical. Literally, the pressure you create is going to start to stimulate the vagus nerve in all of those tissues that it's in, right? Whereas if you start to breathe more up top, it's going to stimulate it in certain ways, but now you're starting to activate the heart and the lungs in a different way too, and it's going to get more into this sympathetic level of things, right? So at rest, your body is smart enough to understand that it shouldn't be stressed out, right? And that it wants to grow, heal, repair, and for humans and some other mammals too, connect, right? Have people around and be able to engage with them. So at rest, the ability to get that deep diaphragmatic breath is just going to start to stimulate neurology in a different way. Same thing with nasal versus mouth breathing. If you can breathe through your nose, you're going to start to have more of this parasympathetic activation, which includes both ends of the vagus nerve, versus mouth breathing. Inhale tends to get you more of the sympathetic activation. Right. Cool.
Is sympathetic more with the fight and flight?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So sympathetic again, the 3 dials, sympathetic, fight or flight. Parasympathetic is the other 2 dials, which is ventral vagal and dorsal vagal. Dorsal vagal, the break, the rest and digest. Ventral vagal, the growth, repair, social connection.
Sweet.
Awesome. So the other thing that I want to touch on before we do the last little bit of just different breathing techniques is mewing. Have you guys heard? Have you guys heard of mewing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like actual viewing.
Not like meow, but who has a good explanation of mewing?
I can't remember. I just remember.
Isn't it the placement of the tongue?
Yes,
Yeah, that's right.
totally. It's the interaction of the tongue with the oral cavity, but truthfully all of the facial bones and how that is tying into the fascia of the rest of the breath, right? So you can like take in a big breath with the tongue on the bottom of your mouth versus try and jam your tongue up to the top of your mouth and take another breath. And does it feel any different?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it feels a bit easier. You get much deeper breaths, right? So the true nature of mewing is it's just how you can activate the fascia to have a proper at-rest breath or even in motion breath, right? So a great way to understand the tongue placement in your mouth is swallow and pay attention to how your tongue is activated when you swallow. What do you notice?
When we're not thinking about it, or when our tongue's on the roof of our mouth? So just don't think about it.
Well, try and swallow without the tongue on the roof of your mouth.
Okay.
We're gonna be sitting here all day, right? So it needs to at least get the tip up, and then how it closes off the trachea, so that when you swallow and it goes down the esophagus, is kind of closes the epiglottis, whatever. But the back of the tongue starts to create pressure on the soft palate of the mouth, right? That activation right there, the back of the tongue pressing up on the soft palate, then becomes how over time you start to influence the facial bone structure, which will be a very quick note to this book. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of this book, Breath by James Nestor. Super basic, not basic, it dives in pretty far, but a great understanding of most things breath. Jaws gets into the topic of facial structure and more of the fascial networking of the tongue and how that starts to impact the breath and the ability to do that as well. This is great for right now. I'm going to pass it around. It's on page 12 if it gets lost, and 36 if it gets lost. But just look at the two pictures that are on that page. So the bottom of 12 right there, and then you can flip to 36. It's a very quick, you'll just see the difference between the two. What it's talking about is tongue placement, when the tongue is putting all that pressure on the palate, and when you have a properly developed face versus an underdeveloped face. And so that paying attention to when you do swallow, what happens is the top of the tongue goes to the tip of the mouth, palate just behind the teeth, the back of the tongue goes into the soft palate, and you kind of get this sense that it's like creating this suction,
Yeah.
right? Kind of pulling. And in true mewing, like focusing on your breath while you're doing mewing, you want that suction to be present. So if you can, without swallowing, try and get that pressure to be there. Try and create like a suction cup from the back of the tongue onto the roof of the mouth. And that is either you'll just be able to get it, or you get the idea of it, and it just takes a little bit of practice. Does it not make
It makes it easier to breathe.
Yeah, totally.
Wow.
Totally. Does it make sense for everyone? Like the tangible thing, creating that pressure with the tongue? Yeah?
I don't know if I feel the suction, but
So just pay attention to swallowing. Helpful to have a lot of water. But pay attention over and over and over to what that feeling does. And if you can, just trying to push the back of the tongue up, and over time it will definitely make more sense. It's just, again, one of those things where it's just going to take the repetitive nature of it.
Sorry if I'm saying too much, but can I share one more
Please
thing?
do. No, I love when you say stuff.
Something that, like, at least from my personal experience and from talking to other people, that happens when you're like actively putting the tongue on the roof of the mouth is like the jaw has a tendency to over-engage. So be like really mindful of like keeping the jaw muscles relaxed while you're doing it. So you can there can be like a lot of jaw tension if you're like really actively doing that with the tongue.
so keep the jaw relaxed.
Keep the jaw relaxed while you're doing it.
Yeah, definitely none of that
Which is
clenching nature.
That's
so-
a challenge for me
Yeah.
all the time, is to relax my jaw.
Yeah, it's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people. which a common thing, like from my lens, is just that's a level of like a baseline level of arousal that your nervous system has.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like a
Yep.
kind of ready,
Yeah,
right?
one of my craniosacral teachers would tell us that like when that has a tendency to happen a lot, it's because as a society we tell people that they need to smile when they really want to growl at someone,
Yeah.
and so it's like that happens when you really want to be growling, but you know you're forcing a smile.
Totally.
Because as a culture, like if you could start growling at people, people may look at
Amen.
you. Like, hey, we're also animals. What's
You're
that?
saying it's okay?
Okay,
Oh yeah.
I think
Oh yeah.
Get it out, get it out.
so. Get it
Yeah.
out.
We definitely
We're
don't do it enough, right?
Somebody's doing something funny, you don't want to like, you're like, I'm gonna pretend like I'm in a good mood. And I really like to like, over-engage my jaw and clench everything.
Yeah.
And everything internalizes.
Yeah.
And, you know.
Yeah.
Then you need to go to a therapist later on in your life.
Yeah.
So
You just
true.
growled at that person when you were a 10-year-old.
Well, I think we do, right? Yeah, we definitely do growl when we're young, and then it becomes this, hey, don't do that, don't show that emotion, yada, 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 right?
And then, yeah,
Yeah. And then we get where we are.
3 decades later,
We're punching walls instead.
exactly.
Yep. Yeah, and so the last thing that is a very quick tangent, this, like, if that feels really helpful for you and something that most of us could benefit from, which mostly comes from the way our food has evolved, right? Food over time has gotten a lot softer, a lot more processed, very easy for us to process in the first stage, so we just swallow a lot without chewing a lot. Something you can try is there's a bunch of different like devices that you can put in your mouth, or chewy silicone things, or even a type of gum called mastic gum, which is just a tree resin that's like chewy, hard things, or change your diet and get more of a chewy diet, right? Would be the most, I guess, seamless way to do it. But you can really start to develop the facial structure even into the 60s, 70s, 80s, develop and regain that kind of growth there and create an easier breathing mechanism. Possible. Wonderful.
I'm trying to eat more carrots.
Totally, yeah. Carrot, yeah, exactly. Great. Does that all make sense so far? Any questions? Wonderful. Then the last thing we'll do is just the different breathing techniques for the different levels of like nervous system activation that you want. And so, yeah, beautiful. What we'll do is kind of just focus on, again, those different dials of the nervous system. And with that in mind, it just becomes, the breath becomes that much more tangible. So we'll do a little bit of each breath and just see how that feels. The first one we'll start with, which is, again, a very primal thing, is activating the sympathetic nervous system. So if you've heard of Wim Hof breathing, this is the easiest one to go to. It's based off of an old technique called Tummo breathing. It's just very fast-paced, and what you're doing is getting that sympathetic arousal for your nervous system, and creating again that further imbalance of O2 and CO2 that your body's not quite used to. But Wim Hof, this dude, became really popular for breathing and then going through phenomenally stressful things, right? So getting his nervous system activated and learning to kind of coach it through that process, and then whatever the wild feat that he did was like running a marathon somewhere in some
Sneaking on a glacier.
some
He was probably
crazy stuff, right? Just crazy stuff. But he attributes all of it to his ability to work with his breath and then manage thereafter, right? So, again, if any, this is the only one where I'd be cautious about lightheadedness or dizziness, anything like that. So if that's all something you're worried about, then I would say just lay on your back for this one. The way that it goes, though, is it's going to be a bunch of, he recommends 30, you can kind of do whatever feels best for your body, but 30 kind of rapid breaths. And it's a big inhale, short exhale, big inhale, short exhale. So a few of them would look like, then you notice the breath will start and very quickly make its way up to the top, and that's going to get this sympathetic channeling, like my feet already start to feel a little bit hot. So you're going to notice it really ramps up the temperature in your body.
Ooh.
Yeah, which we should notice at the beginning, right? When it was nice and cold.
Well, yeah, and I have a lot of hot flashes, so
Yeah.
that'll be interesting.
That'll be interesting.
Yeah.
If it feels funky at all, again, just
Yeah.
back to normal breathing that you've been doing,
Huh.
since you got here, or much before that.
Okay.
And then what we'll do is you'll get a sense of how this feels when you build this oxygen to carbon dioxide imbalance. On that last breath, it's going to be, and then hold. And you
After
just,
the exhale.
yeah,
Party.
you can, well, after you party. You can do it both. You can finish on an inhale and then a hold, or exhale and hold. That's kind of preference. I like to finish the breath on the exhale and then just hold it for as long as you can. What you want to do is not get to the point of making yourself pass out, because you surely can, but get to the point where it no longer feels comfortable. And just kind of sit with that for a moment, and then let your breathing come back in. So you'll get to a moment where you're like holding the exhale, and you just start, looking around, really aware, maybe even want to fidget a lot, and then it's just going to be this sense of what's really happening is kind of suffocating a little bit. But that's why you don't want to do it forever, because your body's going to kick in and go total sympathetic and make you pass out, so you breathe normally, right? So its normal response is
So it's saying
breathe
you're
normally.
being totally dumb, we're gonna just take
Yeah,
you out
it's
of
like, this is ridiculous,
Okay,
we're
yeah,
not going to die.
Yeah.
Stop with that. So you can, before that, make yourself just breathe normally, right? No need for that. So we'll go for 30 of those breaths, then it'll be the last exhale, and you'll just hold your breath and pay attention to what happens there. It will be fairly uncomfortable, especially if you've never done this before. And then once it feels like, I'm good, I'm going to tap out, just take another breath in, and then sit there again. Without exhaling, hold that breath in and see how that feels. And you're going to notice a big rush of calmness, and like what's happening is the oxygen is actually getting back everywhere, right? So we're going to tease the body a little bit and really make it feel oxygen deprivation, and then have it flush and feel that, okay? So we'll start with that. You can seated, you can have a backrest, you can lay on your back. But we're just going to do 30 of those breaths.
We'll just follow your cadence. I'm such a
Whatever.
little person. I'm like ready to start counting on my fingers.
Yeah, I me too, me too.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be perfect.
Okay.
It does not. Whatever cadence is best for you.
Okay.
You do not have to follow mine at all. Once it sounds like you guys are all going on your own, I'm actually going to stop just so I can mind the timer and everything,
Okay, that's good.
and make sure no one actually passes out. Okay?
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, I got you guys, don't worry. So, yeah, comfortable. You can again think about what we just talked about with positioning of the body. You can think about how you're posturing your mouth and your tongue, and not, breathing into a concave spine or convex spine, but a neutral one. Okay? And from there, it's just going to be, again, 30 of these bigger inhales, quick exhale. Okay? So, as we are. Beautiful, keep going, about 10 more breaths. Try and inflate the stomach, get it up into the neck as much as you can. Let it drop through the diaphragm. Okay, and then on that next exhale, let that breath out, and then hold it right there, sit into that exhale. If you haven't created this sense of like, what the hell did I just do? Then later you can experiment with doing this for multiple rounds. Like Wim Hof himself will do this for 3, 4, 5 rounds. Okay, so with the exhale as long as you can, but again, don't compete. Just whatever feels normal. And right about now, if you started to breathe normally before the exhale, let me know later. But whenever it feels normal to you, just get back into, take in that next inhale and then sit with it again at the top of the inhale. And just feel that difference between depriving yourself of oxygen and letting it flow. Does anyone give me a hand if you're not finished? Okay, sweet. So, share. What do you guys feel during the breathing cycles?
I just felt really weird, but exhaling and holding, and then inhaling and holding, it didn't feel any different.
Huh,
It was
okay.
easy for the exhale and the hold.
Yeah.
For quite a while, I was really surprised.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, and it definitely, I mean, that's just 30 quick breaths, right? So once that feels manageable, it's kind of like each level that feels manageable, I would say add one more on and see what happens, right? And just experiment that way.
I was waiting for my feet to get warm.
Yeah,
I got one.
yeah,
Did you?
yeah,
When I exhaled, my mind tried to make me breathe way quicker than my body did.
Yeah.
And so I silenced my mind, and then eventually my lungs popped like a balloon. I was like, oh, okay, so now I need to inhale.
yeah,
And then the same thing, my body was like, no, girlfriend, like breathe. And then it was easier to take in more air.
yeah. Very cool. And so then that kind of becomes like the whole mind-body component too, is you literally just stressed your body out, right? And your mind got to a point of like, maybe we should breathe, like this would be a good idea to breathe. But you're aware it's a safe thing to do in this moment, right? It's not like high-speed traffic, or it's not an animal chasing you. You made yourself feel this way. And so to be able to kind of coax your body into that and then manage it, that can certainly apply to other situations, right? Very cool. So that's a great way of activating the sympathetic nervous system. Anything truly that does a longer inhale or is a lot of mouth breathing can activate sympathetic and kind of get you into that state. Some people will be like, oh, you never need to go into the sympathetic state, but you should always be able to fine tune and modulate. So
If
for
you're
some,
being chased by a lion,
well, then
I
it's
don't know
huge.
how to get into sympathetic
Exactly,
state.
it's huge. And like a fairly common modern day application to that is people who have endured a pretty intense traumatic event. One of the not faults, it's a wonderful thing, but one of the effects of one of the vagal dials is this freeze mode, right? So if you endure too much stress, your body can just like whip up that dial, and it is this like dissociation, freeze. It's the play dead response that has stuck with us in humans, right? So people who are like chronically in that, exploring with this gently can be a great way forward, right? So then next we'll get into starting to stimulate the vagus nerve in different ways. You can kind of tap into activating like dorsal versus ventral, but it gets a little bit more skewed there. The biggest thing is one is rest and digest, and one is more focused on like social connection, right? And so either you can do this in close proximity to other people, or you can do something like bring more awareness to a more emotional place of your body, like your heart, for example, right? Or you could even hold your head, you could hold your neck in certain ways, and that's just going to activate different parts of your body accordingly. Like if you hold your leg, it's not going to do much, right? But literally, like we all have that understanding of the heart space and what goes on there, at least in our minds. You do that, and then you do these breaths, you can focus on activating more of that ventral vagal, getting into this more connection mode. And if you really want to get comfortable with it, you can sit across from someone and like put a hand on each other's heart, right? And then what's happening there is your nervous systems are starting to co-regulate together. Okay. But we'll do two for that. The first one is what I would recommend doing with the hand on a heart or someone else's heart is what's called the 4-7-8 breath, very common breath in the breathwork arena. But this is huge for just activating parasympathetic and really bringing things down. So 4, 7, 8 is a 4-second inhale. You hold that breath for 7 seconds, and then you exhale for 8. So you're now doubling the exhale compared to the inhale, and that is really going to start to bring things down and calm it out, okay? So we'll do, I try and get 3 plus. If you can do 2 minutes of this, which is 6 breaths, beautiful. And it's really gonna just make a massive impact right away. So we'll start with that. See if you can, again, get yourself situated, whatever's comfortable.
So repeat, so 4, 7, 8, so
Yep.
in 4,
Hold 7.
7, and then out 8.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Yep, beautiful. It's also a good focus task, because remembering that throughout your breath gets challenging. Okay, so let's start with that. Just a 4-second inhale again, trying to have most of it or all of it be through the nose. So go ahead. Hold for 7. Hand on the heart if you want. Exhale for 8. And right into the next inhale. Pause for a 7-second exhale. Pause for 7 seconds. And exhale for 8. When you get to the next pause, pay attention to how your body wants to pause. Are you holding tension in a certain spot? Are you like really closing your throat, or can you just stop your breathing and pause it? Try and get 2 more full cycles in. And then once you've done 5 or 6, just give me some eye contact so I know.
Should we come touch your heart?
What's that?
Should we come touch your heart?
Yeah. Just get blasted into another dimension. Very cool. And so the feeling there, how does that? Much calmer,
Yeah.
right? And even just the ease of getting in every subsequent breath is much easier than the feeling, right? Cool. So those are kind of 2 polar opposite levels of it. The third, again, is more of this rest and digest. And this is what's called, my gang's got to go by, sorry. This is called a physiological sigh. The neurology behind it is what you're doing is inflating your lungs to its maximal capacity. Essentially telling yourself that everything is safe and it's a-okay to take in that big of a breath, and you don't have to do much else. So the way it works is through the nose, you're going to take in as big of a breath as you can to the point of like, oh, I've really filled my lungs, and then try to breathe in a little bit more. So just a last little bit of breath you can squeeze into the lungs, really inflate them, and then out through the mouth and let it go. On the first go, it starts to have its effect, as does every breath, right? But you could do this one even just 2 or 3 times, and it will really just shift the way your nervous system is going. If you notice yourself, like this is the quickest and best one, I think, if you find you're in a really stressed out environment, or you just need to really change your mindset just from one moment to the next. Super simple. Okay. So let's just try 3 of those. Think about something that's like you hate, you know, that email you have to respond to, the person who did cut you off in traffic.
Cleaning your house.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, cleaning your house. Just like have that on your mind, and then, okay, let's go into this breath. We're just going to do 2 of them. But taking as big of a breath as you can through your nose. And then once you've really filled it up, get in just a little bit more. And right into it. Okay, so even though we got into the chest, got into the like high levels of breathing, the higher, like higher and higher up, still it's that maximal inflation. We took the time to get into there versus those other breaths that use those areas tend to be much more rapid. So now the rate of breathing comes into play. We're breathing much slower overall, right? And how does that feel? Similarly, very calming, right? Any questions with any of that? Beautiful. So those are kind of how you can start to activate those 3 different dials once you start to have a level of awareness with your body and how it's responding to the external and internal environments. You'll notice like, oh, this is interesting, I do this when, I do X when Y. And you can start to play with how your nervous system starts to regulate itself throughout experiences. And then we're just going to go through a few that really promote self-regulation and balance of the breath and kind of tap into all of them and make sure they can all modulate themselves efficiently, right? So there's 3 favorite ones I have there. The most common that you might have heard of is called box breathing. Super simple, 4-second inhale, 4-second hold, 4-second exhale, 4-second hold. Right? So you just follow this 4-second box and it just becomes really focused on the balance. This one and the next one, really big for focus. Like if you gotta go do some task and you're having trouble, or for people like me where it's like the distractions are a wonderful thing that you love to go pay attention to, just honing it back in on one single thing, this is a great breath for that. So let's get a few of those in. Again, 4 seconds for everything. So inhale through the nose, hold, exhale, hold, inhale, hold, exhale, hold, inhale, hold, exhale, hold. Okay, so that's box breathing. Yeah. Oh no, sorry, just testing it out.
Make sure my wrist still.
Feeling the flow.
Really groovy.
Got it.
So that helps you with ADD?
Helps me, yeah.
Good to know.
But yeah, just that like even tone, the even breath, especially if it can all be through the nose, just cues into having the balanced level of activation for all of your nervous system. Great. The other one kind of comes from a more yogic background. I think it probably has a name, but I don't know it. And it's just nasal breathing. So however you want to position your hand, in whatever way is comfortable. If you like the third eye, you can put 2 fingers on the third eye. But it's kind of just nice to have it stabilized there. Thumb on one nostril, ring finger on the other nostril. You could also just pinch your nose like this, whatever you're comfortable with. What we're going to do is plug one side. So let's start with thumb on the right nostril. And what you'll do is take an inhale. This will all be through the left nostril. Once you take that inhale, you're going to plug the left, open the right, and exhale through the right nostril. And you're going to inhale through the right nostril, plug, and exhale through the left nostril. Okay, so that is 2 full breaths that has switched sides, and that is 1 cycle of this. We'll do this for 5 cycles and see how that feels, okay? So starting on the next breath, in through the left with the right plug. Switch. Inhale on that same side. And switch. Inhale on that same side. Switch. Inhale. Switch. Inhale. Switch. Inhale. Switch. One more. Inhale. Switch. Inhale. Switch. Also helpful to make sure that both of your nostrils are open. But that's another great one for just kind of overall balance and modulation. And the last one, which is the simplest, and I leave it last because I want it to be the freshest in your mind, is considered like the most balanced, fundamental, basic breath you can have, which turns out to be a 5.5 second inhale, 5.5 second exhale. Do you have to count 5.5 seconds exactly? No, but the math works out cool that if you do, you're going to get 5.5 breaths per minute. And so the interesting thing about this one, like if you read the breath book, you'll learn that this is, when he went and studied the different cultures, they had all come up with this kind of baseline breath that was focused around that timing, 5.5 in, 5.5 out, repeatedly, right? And you can do that for, if you want to keep the numbers going, 5.5 minutes. But again, it's just going to be a super balancing breath and just kind of bring everything back to a great baseline. So we'll just go through a few of those. I will try and keep us as on it as I can so you can get that effect.
And I had a question about that, because they also said that the different cultures had like a different prayer or a chant that was sort of on that perfect rhythm, but I didn't
That's so
understand,
true.
like if you're talking, like how are you breathing and talking, like if you're saying like the Hail Mary or one of the, I didn't quite understand that.
Yeah, I don't either.
You can
Okay.
inhale and exhale
But
and talk at the same time.
You can learn,
Hail
yeah.
Mary, full of grace, the Lord be with thee, or,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
weird, but you can do it.
It's like learning to whistle while you inhale and exhale at the same time, or at least, just create noise while doing both. And I guess I would imagine that's how they got there, but
Okay.
it was just cool that they had that all in
Yeah,
common.
I thought so too.
Even if they had no communication back then to share that idea. So for multiple cultures to come across this and have it in their, in their minds that this was the balancing thing, it's cool to tap into that too. So there are no holds, it's just inhale, right to the exhale, right to the inhale, just keep that cycle going, okay? So everyone breath out, get ready for the inhale, and start inhale now. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. So that was just over a minute to get in that round of breaths. And you'll notice it's a little challenging to get the full, be breathing in and out the full for both of those. But as with all of this, if you can't quite do it now, just repeated practice will certainly get you there. Beautiful. And this wouldn't be a chiropractic clinic if I didn't share how that helps too. I just think it's so interesting, the baseline thing of chiropractic is coordination in the body. So between brain and body and getting those two on the same page, right? Making sure that you can have that communication be as seamless as possible throughout brain and body, and how that is going to then start to affect the breath. If you can build that awareness of coordinating your breath however you want, if you can send the energy in different areas and then catch it back up and all the different positions and you get used to your modulating your nervous system, all of it starts to go hand in hand, right? And certainly, you know, that's kind of how I view what I do with people, is helping them build that coordination, and then this is also something that you can do on your own that helps build that coordination. Very cool. Nice job.
Thank you, Joe. That was good.
Yeah. Any questions, comments?
I really like the way you explained everything physiologically.
Yeah.
I never heard it broken down like that, yeah, that helped me a lot, just to visualize things within my body.
Yeah. Well, good. Beautiful. I'm glad I could do that.
On the